welcome back to We On the Threat. Today, in this part of Surviving the System, which is the mini series that we are doing, we're going to be talking about how education has often failed us in America. So, if you're new here, we are currently kicking off our mini series where we talk about systems in America that were never built to protect us and how we survive them anyway. And so our last episode, we talked about housing. Today's education. Next week will be healthcare, and then we're going to finish off with the criminal justice system. Because these systems don't operate separately, they often overlap, reinforce each other, and shape our lives throughout childhood and even adulthood. So, like I said, let's dive into education. So often we are told that school is the great equalizer. You know, we can make friends, we're there to learn, we're there to understand how culture and stuff works. But sadly, history tells another story. Public schools are funded by property taxes, so often wealthier, mostly white neighborhoods get more money and resources while black and brown neighborhoods get the less. What does that mean? That means that the inequality is not accidental. It is built into its funding formula itself. And so this shows up in outdated textbooks, often understaffed schools, overcrowded classrooms, fewer AP honors and elective programs, less access to get arts, less access to STEM, language courses, and even mental health support. And this bias doesn't start in high school. It starts as young as 5 or 6 years old. Um, Often Black children are more likely to be labeled disruptive, unfocused, hyper, aggravated, um, and even like I know from personal experience, they're like, oh, let's get him on some medicine. And I think that's high, which we'll talk about healthcare, but putting them on medicine because they don't focus the way that normal, what they like to call normal is, then they're like, okay, let's medicate him or them. Um, Instead of like being supportive, tutoring, or just having patience. Often times if there's a gifted or honors program, it requires teacher recommendation. But that means there's gonna be bias there, like unconscious bias, because it's literally controlling who has access to opportunity. Black students don't often struggle because they're less capable. They struggle because the system invests less in them. And so when we talk about like housing and we talked about redlining last episode, that also happens here a lot of the times. Oftentimes schools get redlined so that they don't get access to those updated culture stuff. They don't get updated they don't get updated textbooks. They don't get updated they don't have the money for that. The overcrowding in classrooms is real. I know it could be one teacher to 50 students in some of these classrooms, and that takes away and diminishes a lot of what's going on with um like one-to-one or getting that help that people need. And also for it also regulates the norm, like being normal to one's teaching style. So I know for me, I'm very visual, and so if I don't see where this is going or I don't see the vision, I often get stuck. And so yeah, luckily for me, I'm able to visualize things myself and like paint pictures myself, but some people can't do that. And so that, I think that has a huge barrier on um like Black students trying just to succeed. The next thing that we're going to be talking about is the school to prison pipeline, which I know a lot of people might have heard of. But if you look at data, you see patterns. Um, this really made me sad. But like black schoolers, so like age 3 to 5, make up 80% of enrollments, but 48% of suspensions. And then by middle school and high school, black students are 3 times more likely to get suspended, 4 times more likely to be expelled, and 2 times more likely to be arrested on campus. And it's not because their behaviors are worse, but it's because they're punished more harshly for the same types of behaviors. You see this oftentimes. I remember seeing a whole fight happen. And one of my friends who's black, he got arrested, and he wasn't even the aggravator. Like he was defending himself. But since the police officer saw him, and then the other guy, yes, the other guy was white. The white guy was like, he hit me first and done this. So my friend got arrested because of his skin color. They didn't review the cameras till afterwards, after he had already been to the station and stuff. They finally did, yes, they decided to review the cameras, and then yes, he was released. But why take someone else's word instead of reviewing the cameras first? That's the whole issue. Um, and then schools would that have majority black and brown students are more likely to have police officers on campus instead of counselors, metal detectors instead of restorative justice programs, and then juvenile court referrals instead of mediation. And this is not discipline. This is not discipline. This is a pipeline. You're already conditioning them to see police officers, metal detectors, you know, court systems. What does that sound like? That sounds like, oh, you're getting ready for them to go to jail or prison. Not, oh, we believe in you as our future leaders of America. Um, and if you don't believe this, I would say look this up. One of the most shocking facts that it still makes me sad, and I talk about this so often, and people didn't believe me until like a lot of studies were coming out. Some states use third grade reading scores to predict future prison populations. And so my dad used to tell me this as a young, like I was young, and I often like, I'm young, so I'm like, yeah, right, Dad, you're just saying that to make us do better. But then when you look at the statistics, several states do, if your reading level is not good by the third grade, or you're not at like they say like you're not at grade level reading, they're building a prison for you. They're building a prison cell for you. And it's so sad. And it's like this pipeline is not accidental. It's strategic and it's profitable. They make money off of that. Like because this message becomes clear early in life. Like you're a problem before you're a person. That means you know how they say innocent until proven guilty? Yeah, no. You are guilty before you are proven innocent. And that is like I remember my dad used to say that, and I'm like, no, that's not how it is. The justice system. It's supposed to work towards for you. No. In a lot of these systems, you like as a black and brown person, you are guilty until proven innocent. Whether it's, cheating. You're cheating on a test. You gotta prove you're not cheating. You gotta prove you're smart. You gotta prove that you are twice as better than your counterparts. And so even with these barriers, I love the term black excellence. It should I think it should just be called excellence because black excellence makes it seem like it's an exception. Like the reason why you're excellent is because you're black. No, the reason why you're excellent is because you're an amazing person and you have an amazing brain and a smart brain. you know. So even with all these barriers, even with all these hurdles, we still excel. We still graduate. We still make it through school, even while we're battling racism and microaggressions. Yes, teachers looking and students, when you look at during Black History Month or whatever, or whenever, like, we're talking about Black people or we're talking about Black history, don't look towards Black people to tell it. Do not do that. That is a microaggression because now you want them to explain that. They shouldn't have to explain it. I know multiple people who worked full jobs or multiple jobs while in school, whether it's, I'd like to say I was blessed to not have to do that until I was in high school. But many people don't, I mean, not in high school, to college, but many people don't get that luxury. A lot of people have to work multiple jobs while going to school. A lot of them have to support their family financially by doing that. A lot of them have to survive housing instability and food instability. Um, and I think talking about like food instability, a lot of the free reduced lunches is BS in my opinion. Like I think that whole program should get erased because, in my opinion, every kid should be able to eat. And if you know the Black Panther Party, that is why they created they are the ones that created free reduced lunch. If you don't believe me, look at history. Go dig and look. They're the ones that fought for that, who did that, who used to do sandwiches at the park, food at the parks, because they knew that in order for someone to focus, in order for them to actually get an education, they needed food. They needed food in their bellies. They needed to be able to eat. And then the last thing is, um, we have to navigate mental health without support. Oftentimes when we go through mental health, oftentimes when we go through harsh timings, we're expected to just show up the next day, happy and not like act like it never happened. And oftentimes it weighs on people. It shows up to people in different ways. Some people might be violent, some people might shut down, some people might stay quiet, some people might take their own lives. Like I've seen it all, you know. And then, some of us become first generation college students. First generation means that your parents have never been to college and they never graduated college. I think it's with their bachelor's. I think. Yeah, I think it's the Bachelor. So I know some people who get their AA, they think they're still considered first generation. Um, and I would like to say first generation, there's so many scholarships and stuff. I highly recommend that you look up in whatever state that you're in, first generation scholarships. And then some of us, like me, even earn advanced degrees in spaces where we are the only black face in the room. And we don't succeed because the system supports us. We succeed because we refuse to quit. So let me tell you about my journey. Getting my bachelor's uh, while at Washington University and even my master's. So I got my bachelor's in um, criminal justice, and then I double minored in human development and political science. Now, let me tell you, that was not what I was going to go. That's not what I went in for. I thought I was going to be an FBI agent, so I was still going to get the criminal justice degree with a minor in accounting, but I thought I was going to be a criminal justice, um, you know, FBI, Derek Morgan. I thought I was going to be like that, and then I was going to get my another major in math education because I love math. And so I thought I was just going to be this math education whiz. And, when I retired from being in the FBI, I was going to be on the special agent force. I was going to be the Derek Morgan. I was going to be like that. Um, But then I was like, I don't want to get shot at, you know. I don't want, you know. Um, and so when I was navigating and battling like through things at WSU, one of the biggest things that happened to me was in 2018, my grandma passed away. And it was sudden in the sense that she was supposed to live for longer. And unfortunately, due to some malpractice of some doctors and stuff, her life got cut short. And so it was over spring break. I was supposed to go see my ex at the time, and I come back home and like we're staying at my grandma's house. My grandma passes away. And I was devastated. I was literally, I wasn't in the right state of mind. So I email the dean of students and I let them know what happened. The dean of students tells me that I need to go talk to my professors because there's nothing that they can do. So then I'm talking to my professors and like two of them understood, right? Two of them really understood. Um, One of them tells me they need to see a picture of my dead grandma as proof. Um, Even though I sent to their obituary, they're like, anyone can make that up. The other one was like, well, oh, you'll be back a week after. Oh, you should make it back in time for your exam. No grace, no nothing. And then the last teacher was like, professor was like, thought I was pulling a prank. That was mine because oh, apparently, people lie about um their grandma dying, which I do understand. People do that. And then when I sent a photo, like, so I had to literally send a photo to some of these people of the like where the funeral home as proof that that's where my grandma was, like archived as being like reported being dead. And then I I had to send obituaries, all this stuff, and I'm helping my mom at this time, like trying to make sure she's planning the celebration of life because my mom didn't want a funeral, my grandpa didn't want a funeral, for my grandma. He wanted a celebration of life, and so I'm doing all this, and they're making it like this barrier that they were making it hard, and so thankfully my friend Haley literally like helped me, and it's funny because me and Haley weren't really friends at that time. Like we had like just kind of met, and so she helped me pass some of my classes. But that was my worst GPA. That was my worst year ever. And they didn't take it lightly on me. They put me on active probation, and um they tried to take my financial aid from me. And that's where that's how I was attending school is through my financial aid. And I felt horrible. I lost my job as a resident advisor because my GPA dropped. I had no, I felt like I didn't have the support of Washington University. Um, I will say I did end up bouncing back. I did. It was really hard, but I bounced back and I was able to graduate. And I think after my grandma died, I had a clear purpose that, um, like of what I wanted to do. But another thing that happened is right around the same time my grandma passed away. I met this other person because I thought I was taking all the required classes to become a math education teacher. Thankfully, I met someone and she was like, no, these are all the wrong classes you're taking. So I'm like, what do you mean? So she gives me what she needed to graduate. And it was a completely different thing. If I would have been following what my counselor was saying, I would have failed. and I would have been there spending more money because, luckily I was on scholarships and I didn't have to take out no loans. And then when I became a resident advisor, that even helped me even more because they cover your room and board. But if it wasn't for her telling me that, I would have failed. I would have. And so I think one of the biggest things is realizing that after that, I said, okay, what do I want to do? Okay, math education, I love math and all, but teaching it, I don't think so. So I had to sit down with myself and be honest with myself and see what I want to do. And then one of the days, my friend was like, you're really good with kids and you're really good with helping people. It's like, yeah, I do love helping people. And so that's why I decided to that's why I got my major in criminal justice and then my double minor in human development and political science. That way I can get this full rounded. But I didn't trust my counselor because of how long she was steering me in taking classes that weren't helping. So I spent hours upon hours and I would go and I was like, okay, what do I need? How many credits do I need to graduate? Okay, what classes do I need to graduate? So I literally wrote it all down. I have this big, huge book, notebook that I have, and it literally has every class that I needed to take. Then I'd cross it out when I would take it and pass it. And so that's what helped me graduate in 4 years instead of 5 or 6 years. Because my um counselor did not believe I was going to graduate in 4 years. She kept saying 5 or 6 years. But I was like, nope, I'm graduating in 4 years. I'm graduating with my friends. And so I doubled down. My last quarter, I took 24 credits. To put it in perspective, a normal person takes 15 credits per semester. They go by semesters at WSU. Um, and I passed. I passed with a 3.9. And that just shows the determination that I had and a lot of black and brown people have. I sat on a board for the black, what is it called? The black, shoot, I'm trying to think, y'all. It's called the Black Alumni Association. And I sat on there and I was a part of the scholarship board, like and finance. So I helped a lot of black and brown people be able to afford to come. I mean, yes, we didn't have like thousands upon thousands of dollars, but we had thousands of dollars to help be able to help one or two students. And that to me brought my like it made me proud. It really did. And then I went on to get my master's in criminal justice with emphasis to victimization. Um, and when I tell you, when a system tries to fail you and hold you down so hard, this like getting my master's definitely did that. One of the biggest struggles was I kept dealing with death in my family. And I felt like it was like back to back to back to back. I dealt with a heartbreak. I found out I had diabetes. And I was in the hospital for 2.5, 3 weeks. And so I felt like I got no grace from when I was getting my master's. And when I would explain that to them, they basically were like, they were kind of just okay, like toughen up, kind of sort of. Now I will say I had some good professors that extended deadlines. Like when I say extend deadlines, like when I was in the hospital, like I couldn't do anything. I was in diabetic ketoacidosis, so I was weak, I was tired and fatigued. So I didn't want to do nothing. I couldn't do anything. And so when I tell you, they definitely extended deadlines to the last possible day. Some of them really did that for me. Um, and I'm grateful for that. Sadly, I wasn't able to pass because in masters you have to have a 3.0. or it's considered you failed. And so I had to appeal and appeal and appeal and appeal so hard because one, they tried to put me on so I ended up taking a year off and I ended up withdrawing from my classes, and they were still trying to charge me for those classes. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I never stepped foot. I didn't take these classes. I withdrew before the deadline, and I was struggling to fight them. And they took my favorite tool, 8 away, and I ended up like having to like be worried, am I going to be able to finish? And I had to set up a GoFundMe because I was literally like I was being depressed. I was like highly like suicidal because I'm just like I'm defeated. Like I lost. And so I finally got my appeal approved. I was able to come back. Um, but then they tried to put another barrier saying, "Oh yeah, you passed these classes." Because I did. I was passing. I was passing 3.6, 3.8, 3.9. One I had one semester I had 4.0. And they were trying to say that my pace was too slow. Basically, how many credits I took, even if you withdraw, um, you have this pace. And so they said my pace was too slow and they might consider like I might have to drop. And so I'm just like, man, this is one after the other. What do you mean pace? Y'all never told me about this pace. Y'all just said I had to have a 3.0 GPA and this and that. And so I'm like, this, what are you talking about this pace? And so it was a long battle, but I was finally able to get my pace back on track. I was able to graduate. Yes, I think it took me a year later, or maybe I know it took me like a few quarters after some of my friends had graduated, but I graduated, and I was that's just the things that like I experienced with the education system. Um, and it's sad, but even after graduation, like barriers don't magically disappear. Black graduates carry one of the highest student loan debts. Um, a lot of us are paid less, even with the same degrees as our white peers. And then corporate America questions our qualifications, confidence, and communication constantly. I think a lot of people don't understand that in jobs, um, there will like you have to meet every qualification. And then you still have to prove yourself. You can have the education, you can have the degrees, you can have the skill set, you can have all this stuff, but I know oftentimes black sounding names, they will disqualify them. They won't say that, but it's just like I'm blessed that my parents didn't name me a black name and they named me a common name, but some people don't get that. And so, I think like, we're not impressive because we survived college or we survived these systems. We're more impressive because we succeeded in a system that is built against us. So, what do we need to do to change this? So, if we want a school system that actually supports every child, the solution cannot be a Black History Month once a year, or what's it? What do we call? What we used to call it? Not a Spirit Week, um, like Diversity Weeks, or just an MLK poster in January where we talk about it, or oh yeah, we get Juneteenth off, but don't really um understand. We need to go deeper. So we need equitable funding, don't matter what zip code or what area you live in. We need an inclusive curriculum that teaches the full truth of history, the full truth. There are still people who walk around that think that Christopher Columbus discovered America. You know, there's still people who believe that. People don't understand the true history of Pocahontas. They think of the Disneyland, but not the full truth. You know, um, the Lewis and Clark. They'll understand the full, honest truth. We need people to understand truth. There needs to be culture in there. It needs to be raw truth. Like, for example, slavery. No one waltzes on a boat and was like, "Yep, we're gonna go relieve this slavery." Thanksgiving, that's coming up. We're not, it was not a feast. I'm sorry. Anyone who believes that, it is a lie. It was not a feast. It was a massacre. Thanksgiving should be Thanksgiving massacre, which is why a lot of people either don't celebrate Thanksgiving or they reform Thanksgiving to Friendsgiving. They reform it to different. But yeah, we need truth in history. That's the only way that people can actually learn. Black History Month should be um Black history incorporated into our curriculums. Um, we need that a lot in schools. And then if it's not already, it needs to be mandatory anti-bias trainings for teachers. Now, okay, let me tell you something. It needs to be more than just anti-bias. It needs to be how to work with people with different abilities, with different set of skills that might not understand lecturing. I think it needs to be cultural awareness. I think it needs to be understanding that, okay, why is this kid sleeping in class? They must be a troublemaker. No, they could have been just getting off working a 10 to 12-hour shift and then had to come to school. We need more hands-on. A lot of a lot of people these days are hands-on. We need more hands-on training. We need more teachers. Because I'm sorry, we're not putting it all on the teachers. We need more teachers that could be in classrooms. That way, the class sizes get smaller and they can get specialized help. Um, we need more counselors and mental health services instead of policing. I think a lot of schools are starting to do this in Seattle and like Washington, which I am happy about, but we need more. We need more. We need a restorative justice program and teaching instead of suspension. First of all, suspensions do not do anything. Um, it doesn't teach responsibility. It doesn't teach them that what they're doing is bad. Instead of what it's teaching them is, well, I don't want to go to school anyway. Let me get suspended so I can go home and just, you know, my parents most likely both my parents um are at work, so I'll just be home playing video games. Or if I even live with my parents. So restorative justice needs to be taught instead of this punishment. Especially what really irritates me is the zero tolerance policy. Zero tolerance is often catered towards Black and brown people. Black and brown people are mostly affected by the zero tolerance. I actually have a whole PowerPoint that I did on zero tolerance and how it like started and how Black and brown people were the heaviest in getting in trouble for the zero tolerance. Um, for example, I know I've gotten into fights in high school and I got suspended because I defended myself. But in the zero tolerance eyes, what I should have did was try to go get a teacher. So But even then, as soon as you engage in a fight, you're technically in a fight. And so I've had literally like principals tell me that I should have basically let the person beat me up and not fight back. Um, and so I think that is something that is often not talked about is the zero tolerance policies is flawed. Like I understand what the intention is, but the intention is not meeting what is reality. And also, we need more for access to gifted programs and AP programs. We definitely need more support for college students academically and financially. Um, yeah, children should not need to be like extraordinary just to receive basic dignity. Um, so every episode, I want to try to uplift an organization that's working to break down these systems rather than reinforce them. So I actually did some research, and the Black Teacher project is an initiative working to recruit, develop, and retain Black educators so that Black students have teachers who understand them, affirm them, and advocate for them. So if you want to learn more about them, I would highly recommend you check them out. I would like to say, um, we like to like people of color love to see people in that position because then we're like we can achieve that. And so I was looking at this and I was looking at their page and just seeing what they stand for, and it's amazing. It's something that like I want to start when my nonprofit is getting them to have mentors, like getting youth to have mentors so that when they grow up, they're like, my mentor told me I could be whatever I could be, whatever I wanted to be. And I saw him do what I was doing, you know. So I want to leave y'all with a question to sit with before next week. When was the first time school made you feel seen or unseen? Whether it was a teacher who believed in you or a system that pushed you out, your story matters and you deserve to be heard. I know for me, it was my seventh grade math teacher. His name was Mr. Dejanaba. Um, Literally, he made it so that his classroom was successful. Like, he made sure that he taught math, but he made sure that we understood and that he wasn't just talking at us. He wanted a conversation. And I remember when one of the biggest things is he made sure that like if we didn't understand, he'd be willing to like stay after, he'd be willing to re-explain things. But also I think something that really like as like he was a black man, one of the funniest things is um so he liked Mortal Kombat, and so if you got a perfect score, he would say flawless victory on your papers. And so I always looked forward to that because I always wanted a flawless victory. And I remember one time I got one question wrong because I got like a 24 out of 25. And I was like, no, because I really wanted the flawless victory. Um, but yeah, so um just reflect on who was that person that made you seen or made you feel heard. Also, I'm calling for stories. So if you want to be featured in future episodes, DM me. Um, Most of y'all have me, or like if you're on Spotify, I think you can message me on there. If not, my email is BERRY.JACOB15 at yahoo.com. So I will say, write me. I want to hear stories. I want to hear good or bad. And my second season, I want it to be with me interviewing people about their experiences. And so we could talk about what you want to tailor your stuff to, what you want your episode to be about. Because I really want to tailor that to other people, Black and Brown people's stories. Um, because it's time for the world to hear that we're more than statistics. It's time to hear our voices. It's time to hear our stories. So thank you for listening to We On the Threat and for sticking with me through Surviving the Systems miniseries. The next episode, we'll be talking about the healthcare system and why medical mistrust exists, how racism shows up in hospitals and clinics, the history behind it, and how Black people fight to survive a system that doesn't listen to our pain. So if this episode hits home, share it with someone who deserves better for the school system. And remember, we are not a threat. We are brilliance in a world that tries to dim our lights.